going to cross over live to Minister Lindiwe Zulu right now.
There we go.
Puzzle shops and so forth. And I thought that was a very good idea, but at the end of the day, it's about ourselves as a department and government overall, ensuring that awareness is made towards why small and medium enterprises and cooperatives are supposed to be supported. They're not supposed to be supported in words. They are supposed to be supported in deeds. And this is what I've had to be experiencing in the 3.5 years that I've been in office. I've realized that there's a lot of talk about supporting small and medium enterprises, but somewhere along the line, it falls short sometimes of really understanding the real challenges that are faced by SMMEs. Sometimes it falls short of the fact that there's got to be an understanding that many of your small and medium enterprises as well as cooperatives, they're having to compete with big companies who've got deeper pockets, who've been operating for a very long time, and they are supposed to be competing with the same big companies. So my view and the view and our view in the department is that, yes, there is a political will to make sure that we support your SMMEs, but a political will on its own, not being supported by real activities, by real financial and non-financial support, by ensuring that we create that conducive environment for SMMEs, it would almost be meaningless. But I know, as a matter of fact, as a Minister of Small Business Development, since I was appointed into this position, I've felt the pulse of your small and medium enterprises, people who are saying, we're not only going to wait for government to support us, we're going to see what we can do on our own, but you, Minister, and the department and government, take responsibility for supporting us by ensuring that there's the proper legislation in place, that there's a proper environment in place, that there's support, financial and non-financial support. You do what you need to do as government. We will also do what we have to do as small and medium enterprises. Now, why are we here today? We are here today because the African National Congress is going to be looking at, it's finalizing actually, we're not going to be looking at, we are going to be finalizing policies which we developed during the policy conference that took place not long ago, and therefore this conference in December is supposed to endorse or change some of the proposals that were proposed. But I don't think that there's going to be much of a change. Safe to say that obviously our responsibility is to always look at the current environment facing us and begin to say, how do we adjust so that whatever policies we put in place would respond to the challenges of today. Now, this 54th conference that we have here, it must be understood also from a position that we are not reinventing the wheel. We are moving from what previous conferences of the African National Congress, the decisions policy decisions that were taken. For instance, when I was listening to the SG yesterday making his presentation as giving a report as an SG from an organizational point of view, part of what he spoke to was that the 53rd conference, which is the previous conference of the ANC, characterized our current phase as the second phase of transition of the National Democratic Revolution towards the National Democratic Society. This phase should be characterized by radical socio-economic transformation. In this regard, the conference recognized how the ANC brought about change in the lives of people in South Africa broadly, but it, however, concluded that such is to transform whole. This is still to transform wholly and to provide economic power to the majority of the unemployed and to deal with poverty, inequality, and unemployment, and this must be obliterated. And this comes out of the previous conference, and therefore, in this conference, what we will be looking at, and in particular the economic cluster, we'll be looking at the current economic environment in which we're finding ourselves in. How do we deal with it from an economic cluster point of view? And why I raise the issue of the economic cluster is because it's very clear to us that unless we have a properly coordinated approach to supporting each other, both in terms of building the economy, unless we also have a common approach of the challenges that we have, because South Africa is a developmental state. And if we miss that point, that it is a developmental state, we might end up developing interventions that do not necessarily speak to that. The ANC, in some of the decisions that were taken prior to this conference, identified the areas which we need to deal with in supporting SMMEs. For instance, in 2012, the 2012 Mangaung resolution encouraged the creation of new businesses, cooperatives, and expansion of small businesses by reducing costs of compliance, ensuring payment of government invoices. This is one very important aspect. So what we have done as a department, for instance, is to take that resolution and look at how do we make sure that this resolution is implemented and what are the things that we need to do. And I think that the other one, which is still the 2012 Mangaung resolution, it says promote targeted procurement for SMMEs. And I think you are aware of the fact that when we started this department, having been appointed by President Jacob Zuma, this issue of procurement was a big issue because government had been trying to put in place a system of the 30% procurement to make sure that it targets your small and medium enterprises. But more than anything else, it also targets your black businesses, your youth, your women, and people with disability. And what we have done as a department, we have pushed for the adoption of the 30% procurement, and that is now in place. However, I do want to say to you that adopting it and ensuring that it is now a policy of government and the implementation thereof, both at national, provincial, and local level, will continue to be a bit of a challenge. But I think that with the commitment of the government departments, all of them committed to ensuring that this 30% procurement is implemented, we shall be able to succeed. But I also want to raise this issue to yourselves, especially your small and medium enterprises, to say that if government has identified and adopted the 30% procurement, it therefore means that yourselves should be ready to take advantage of it. Because it's one thing for us to agree that there's 30% procurement, and in some provinces, actually, I know that the Northwest has gone really higher than 30%, and I'm hoping that many other departments and many other provinces will exactly do the same thing. The challenge is when that 30% is now declared, where are the SMMEs who would be ready with quality goods and quality everything to make sure that they take advantage of that. And that's one of the things that we need to work on, both as a Department of Small and Medium Enterprises, the Department of Trade and Industry, as well as the Department of Economic Development, because we should be the team that is a driving force towards ensuring that we've got policies that address the challenges that are faced by the country from an economic point of view. Coupled with this, you also have the 2014 manifesto, which spoke to build on commitments on social accords to bring black-owned small businesses and co-ops in the supply chains of larger companies and the public sector. Identify opportunities, for instance, at schools and in other places. We have feeding schemes. Now, it really is an indictment that you have these feeding schemes and you have the Department of Social Development, which is the main driver behind this, as well as the Department of Education and Higher Education. Some of the feeding schemes, if you take a place like Mkanduli, I'm just making an example, not much is being procured around that area. You find that the procurement of feeding of the children in that very area comes from many, many kilometers away, does not give your farmers in the area an opportunity, does not give your SMMEs and cooperatives that opportunity. And we believe as a Department of Small Business Development that we really need to focus on that. Part of what we want to do as a department in focusing on that is to strengthen the intergovernmental relations so that there's a coordinated effort. And that coordinated effort would then enable us to see where the opportunities are and make sure that we channel your SMMEs and cooperatives properly. If you think about the issue of the school feeding scheme, not only is it the issue of school feeding scheme, it's also about uniforms that are worn by our children in these schools. Again, we have a problem where far-flung areas, the uniform has to be coming from other places when there are women in those areas who could be organized into cooperatives, into their own small businesses, supported by my department by ensuring that we give them the necessary implements, supported by the Department of Trade and Industry, supported by social development. But importantly, it's about if we support those women, for instance, or men who have some little factories or something, it's about them getting the access to the market. This is where the challenge comes through to them, because they can make the uniforms, but when they go to the principals to engage with the principals that we want to sell the uniform here, we want to sell the sports uniform here, they get the principals telling them, no, we have already got people that we are buying from completely outside of the areas from where they are working. And the January 8th Lekgotla of the ANC also made recommendations that more financial resources to be earmarked to develop infrastructure in neglected areas for the benefit of community enterprises, allocate resources to advance SMMEs and cooperatives, resuscitate and develop township and rural economies. Again, I've just spoken a little bit about this, and I think that we need to make sure that this is implemented because, again, it speaks to what the challenges are faced by SMMEs. In January 2015, the Lekgotla also indicated that we have to migrate all functions relating to SMMEs and cooperatives to the Department of Small Business Development. This is very important because in my engagement out there, I find that some SMMEs continue to request our support, only to find that that support is still sitting with the Department of Trade and Industry. What we didn't want to do, obviously starting, we needed to strengthen our structure first as the Department of Small Business Development and not behave like a bull in a china shop where you just want to grab everything to your side only to find that you collapse it later on. But now we are a fully fledged department. We know we have the systems in place, and therefore it's important for us to then get those functions that are still remaining in order to make sure that we now are able to service the SMMEs properly. At the same time, the 2015 National General Conference also spoke to promoting SMMEs in this ICT value chain, especially youth-owned and women-owned. Here, I must indicate that I was very excited by the Department of Post and Telecommunications, because when we engaged with them about the ICT sector and the opportunities that exist there for small and medium enterprises, they then decided that they were going to go and develop a strategy which is focused on supporting SMMEs who are in the ICT sector. And this strategy was adopted by Cabinet. And this is one of the things that we're saying as a department is example to other departments, because as a department, we do not necessarily have the full capacity to be able to service small and medium enterprises. Besides, we're not specialists in the areas where SMMEs need support. So when you get a department like this really on its own, developing that strategy, presenting that strategy, getting Cabinet to adopt that strategy, we want to encourage other departments to do exactly the same. Because here is what we say as a Department of Small Business Development. If government says its a budget is this much, it means there is a lot of that money that can go to small and medium enterprises, because if government seems to be the one that has really got your procurement, which is in almost all departments, the challenge is, what do we do and how do we help our SMMEs? And I would like to thank Minister Cwele in particular and his department for having made sure that they have a strategy towards supporting SMMEs. And if there are any of the SMMEs who are here today, you must get that strategy so that you can then be able to know that when it comes to post and telecommunications, this is what they have to offer for small and medium enterprises. You come to us for support from a financial and non-financial point of view. It's one of the reasons why today we have the CEO of CEDA, Mandisa Chikwatamba, who's sitting here. I think she can raise her hand. We will introduce some of the people who are here, who are our national gazelles. We also have the agriculture, and this decision also said agricultural strategy should ensure its support for local producers creating local markets. And I'm sure you're aware that as our economy hasn't been doing very well, when the figures were launched in as far as the GDP is concerned and growth is concerned, it was identified that agriculture was one of the sectors that was enabling our economy to go up, just slightly up. It therefore means we must also focus on agriculture and agro-processing, and therefore the SMMEs who are in agriculture and agro-processing, your farmers and all that, they need to take advantage of this and be the ones also who gain. Because it's one thing to talk about agricultural sector being the one that's helping the economy to grow, only to find that when you dig deeper, you find in the main, it's still the same old white males who are actually in charge of the agricultural sector. We're not having a quarrel with them from any point of view. Safe to say that, one, South Africans and black South Africans in particular need the land. Number two, they need to be assisted with skills in order for them to be able to utilize that land adequately. And therefore, when we talk about the farmers who are still owning tracts and tracts of this land, and there's very little transformation there, we're calling on the farmers to say, this is your country, this is our country, but if you don't work with us in this, tomorrow we might have a bigger problem which we might not be able to deal with. The NEC in March 2016 resolution also spoke to the issue of addressing of red tape associated with setting up business and streamlining licenses. Again here, licensing sits with the Department of Trade and Industry, and we have lots of small and medium enterprises who come to us and say, now look, Minister, it's taking too long for us to get the license and all that. But many also come and complain about red tape. Our department has had a special program, which is a program that's being rolled out to all the provinces to really deal with the issue of red tape. 2017 National Policy Conference spoke to expanding the opportunities for sustainable livelihoods through support for cooperatives and micro-enterprises. The same 2017 National Policy Conference spoke to building the capacity of the democratic developmental state and implement programs of economic transformation. It would be very interesting for you all who are here to really go into those decisions of the ANC in as far as supporting small and medium enterprises. I am not able to go through it all because I think that I have to be conscious of the time. I also would like to say part of what we're going to do in the engagement is in responding to the questions. I will continue to dig particularly into what the department is able to do and capable of doing. But we are here attending the conference of the African National Congress, and we thank you, Darrell, for having arranged this, because it means that we will be able to speak as we listen to you. It means some of the things we're hearing there, we will be able to take those to the discussions at ANC commissions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. We are now going to go over to the conversation part. So please, if you could give me an indication as to who would like to ask some questions. Please, as I said, keep it brief. And I know that the Minister has invited some of the National Gazelles here. So it'll be good for us to also hear from the National Gazelles what they are doing and what sort of support the department has given them. So if you could also give me an indication from the National Gazelles table who would like to make a contribution there. If I could just ask you to stand up when you ask the questions so that the cameras can pick you up. I've noticed quite a few hands. Okay, we'll take 5 questions in a round. There's a lot of questions this morning. I'm going to start with the National Gazelles here on the front table. If you can bring the mic to the front, and I've noticed the 5 hands over there. I'll come to this side in the second round. The lady, let's start with the lady. Yes. If you can just keep it, as I said earlier, just brief so that we can accommodate as many as possible.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sister Jenny. It's a privilege to be here today. I own a company called Gentle Touch, and I'm very privileged to be one of the top 40 National Gazelles. That's just been announced recently by the Minister. And I developed a cream, a natural healing and beauty cream 25 years ago, which is renowned internationally for changing the texture of your skin within minutes. And the same cream repairs and regenerates skin and heals burns and wounds and helps people with disability. And the Minister has taken me to China very recently, together with Mandisa and a whole delegation from the Department of Small Business. And the response I got in China was amazing. And in China, they actually interviewed me on TV. If you go on LinkedIn, Sister Jenny Lyon, you can watch the interview. And the Chinese were quite amazed because there's no cream like mine anywhere in the world. And please go and watch that video. And so it's been a struggle for 25 years. And by the grace of God and the National Gazelles program, they've given me this opportunity to get exposure so that I can heal people. And that sounds amazing, but I just want to share with you that a week ago, there was a fire at one of the markets, and a woman got burnt. She was on fire for 5 minutes, and because I was there and I was able to help her within minutes, I actually put a picture of her on LinkedIn. She's barely got a mark on her body. So please, you have to support me in every way you can, and I'm so grateful to the Minister and to CEDA and the Department of Small Business, because I'm literally saving lives every single day, and people need to know there is a Sister Jenny and a cream that's so unique in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you can send the mic to that table there. There's 2 gentlemen next to each other. We'll take those 2.
Thank you.
If you go over the 2 minutes, it's 10,000 Rand a minute over 2 minutes. Okay.
Sorry about that. Greetings to the Honorable Minister and all esteemed guests. My name is Alfred Mhlongo, and I think one of the most pressing challenges that faces us as young business owners in particularly rural and peri-urban areas where the presence of mainstream media and internet penetration remains limited is access to information. We don't have access to information regarding funding opportunities. We don't have access to information regarding business mentorship and business coaching and incubation services. Whatever services are, they remain very, very limited and largely inaccessible for a myriad of reasons. So you find that our small businesses fail within the first 2 years, some as early as within 6 months of inception. So we want to find out from the Honorable Minister what interventionist measures and what programs are currently in place to address this challenge, and what plans going forward are going to be introduced by the department so that we are also integrated into the mainstream economy and to ensure that there's inclusive growth from particularly small business owners from rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darrell. My name is Thabiso Taka from EnviroServe. Minister and Comrade Lindiwe, we raised this matter yesterday with Minister Davis, and it has to do with the importance of small and medium enterprises. in the economy. I think it's universally acceptable that, and agreed to rather, that a lot of the jobs that we're talking about will come from small and medium enterprises. So the importance of small and medium enterprises cannot be overemphasized. The issue has to do with the payment terms. That a lot of medium and small businesses, when you talk to them, the biggest failure or reasons for failure is this issue of payment. Now, the proposal that we discussed with the Minister of Public Enterprises, because in my other capacity, I chair the Industrialization Supply Development Association. That can it be incorporated in the performance compact of CEOs of state-owned companies, accounting officers of provincial departments, as well as municipal managers at local government level? Can it be incorporated in their performance compact that 30-day payment accounts for a larger percentage of their performance when they're evaluated? If you do that, you practically respond to a very important support. You spoke earlier on, Minister, correctly so, about practical support to medium and small businesses. If it is not directly linked to the performance of these accounting officers, we will forever be talking about small businesses failing, going under, not because they're doing bad business, precisely because the issue of cash flow is very important in any business, as you would know. So what I put forward to you, Minister, with respect is, can you in the economic cluster in Cabinet raise this matter? I assure you, you will get the support of Minister Lynn Brown and probably other ministers in that cluster, including Minister of Finance. Is it something that you can look at, Chief? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. We're going to go to this middle table. Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you so much. My name is Tim Makamu, the chairperson of African Business Leaders Forum. Minister, it's very refreshing to hear that in the 54th ANC National Conference, it's been resolved that the conference will carry on the policies of the ANC, which are very good. I've got only two questions, Minister. Question number one, when it comes to land, you raised the issue of land. It's a very thorny issue in South Africa. My simple question is, what is the Ministry of Small Business Development doing to make sure that small businesses, especially farmers, own land? That's number one. Number two, you mentioned that red tape has been seen as one of the areas which must be removed to make sure that small businesses are thriving. Minister, you mentioned that there is a plan that is being rolled out nationally around that to address that particular issue. Would you please shed some light on that, dig a little bit deeper, and tell us what is that program? I'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last question for this round will go to the back table. And then we'll come around for this side. And I've noticed you.
Thank you. My name is Sipho Mbele, founder and CEO of Mbelesi Holdings, a film-making company. The problem that we're having as small business is that when you go and ask for funding from the DTI, they want you to come up with 3 million rand. How would you get that if you're a small business and you're still growing? And you still approach multi-choice, because we have this film, a very beautiful film a story that you want to tell about South Africa. And then they'll tell you and ask you, who are you? Where do you come from? Are we working with elite people or known people? Or are we trying to bring up new businesses and make them known as well in the country? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think that's a good start.
Thank you very much. Access to information, yes. part of what we do as a department is to work with other departments who have the greater responsibility for such. In the Department of Communication, for instance, we've got a transversal agreement with that department to look at how we can be able to assist, especially in the rural areas, access to information. And by the way, also for the department, we have CEDA and CIFA, which has got about 54 offices, Mandisa? Yes, about 56 offices throughout the country. I know that that's not adequate. So what we have been discussing, first and foremost, is how do we utilize existing channels so that those channels would also focus on speaking to issues of small and medium enterprises. If you listen to a whole lot of radio stations in particular, your community radio stations and so forth, we have targeted those community radio stations to be able to communicate. Under the Department of Communications, for instance, the studios and everything where we connect to almost 60 community radio stations so that those can be able to reach our people in far-flung areas. I think it's important for us really to also increase the support that we give to community newspapers, because there's quite a lot of community newspapers, and I know that some of the provincial governments really have started having their own community newspapers which are for free. But I know somebody else will say that some people can't read. But my view is that if we use every available platform to be able to communicate, and if you look at the fact, the penetration of cellular phones throughout the country, yes, of course, then you've got the issue of network, whether people are able to get the network or not. Then others will come and tell you that, hey, Minister, data must fall because data is very expensive for them. So we are engaging at that level to see what is it that we can do to make sure that the communication channels that are already available assist us in communicating the information. The challenge from a South African perspective really is the packaging of that information. And the packaging of that information tends to focus on people who are in towns and cities and forgets about the fact that a lot of people are in rural areas. The other thing that we are trying to work on as a department is to see if we can have mobile offices that would go out and reach out to people. And we looked at the example of the Department of Home Affairs, which had big trucks that used to travel throughout the rural areas to be able to communicate and be able to even process the applications for IDs and so forth. What we want to see, if we can have the money to do so, but I think that if we were to also speak to the private sector and some of the institutions that are there, I'm sure we can be able to have those trucks that can be able to have within them SARS, ourselves, and all other relevant departments in one space where if a truck arrives in a rural area, you know that the communication that needs to be happening there will be giving people the opportunity to understand not only just what have we got to offer as a department, but a whole range of other issues, because there's SARS, there's registration and all that. It's part of the plans that we have, which in my view, obviously, will take a while because we're just a department of 3.5 years, almost 4 years. We are very young, and in the 3.5 years, we've experienced quite a number of things which we think that if we can have a bold political will to get it implemented, and I think we do have the political will, but the challenge we have is our systems in implementing that political will. And I also think part of the communication we've discussed with the Department of, we had a summit not long ago with the Department of Local Government. The reason why we're having this summit is because as a department, out of our experience, we also realized that if we don't have strong local economic development offices, we're going to have a very serious problem, because not everybody can be able to be calling Pretoria or going to Pretoria all the time. But if we strengthen those offices by ensuring that they have the right people in those offices, people who understand the economy of that area, because if people don't understand the economy of that area, how are they going to be able to then support your small and medium enterprises? So they must understand the economy of the area. They must also get the right budget. All your small and your local government, your local economic development offices are really poorly. And I think the reason why that is happening is because from the very beginning, when we started, there was a lot of focus on strengthening your national and provincial structures. Local government structures from an economic point of view are only now begin to be supported. We believe as a department that if we have that communication right at that level, and if we have your local economic development offices being the ears and the eyes for the department, then life would be easier for us. As a minister, I wouldn't really have the kind of pressure that I have, that I get a call from somebody somewhere who has my number, and rightfully so, they have my number, and they're asking for a support by the department and SIFA and SIDA. They're asking that at national level when they should actually be asking that at a local level where they can get immediate support. We are conscious of the fact that information is not reaching as many people as it's supposed to reach, but we are looking at supporting each other collectively to make sure that those that are not getting the information, they get that information. Access to our own products as a department. Again, we are dependent very much on your MECs for economic development. We've had meetings with all the MECs of all the 9 provinces, except for the Western Cape. I think the Western Cape, something happened there. We didn't have that meeting. But at the end of the day, for me, it's not even about who is in government in the Western Cape in as far as the support for SMMEs is concerned, because all these are our people. The Western Cape belongs to South Africa. It's not an island somewhere. So the strengthening of our relations with both your MECs for economic development and the local structures will go a long way in addressing this issue of information. In some countries, we are told, I'm yet to visit Rwanda at some point, I'm told that the turnaround time for people for doing everything in Rwanda is faster than it is in South Africa, because they have these one-stop shops, even in rural areas. So when people have to go and look for information, they don't have to be traveling long distances, spending a lot of money which they don't have, just to get information which could be easily accessible to them. So we're looking at this in the long-term plan, but I do want to say that what we already have as a department in the form of SIDA and SIFA in the 54 offices, really there's a lot of work that's being done there. There's a lot of communication that's being done there. Part of the challenges for the department is that we did not have money for advertising, money for communicating. We had absolutely nothing, and we have to scramble around. And I had to literally almost go to each and every activity where I can be able to go and speak, in order just to let people know what is it that we are doing. And my view is that our department cannot operate maximally without having the resources for communicating what we already have. And of course, you know that with the economy not doing so very well, we've also fallen on the chop here. We've also been told as a department that we have to chop, and I don't know how far we're going to be able to chop, because at the end of the day, we need more of that money to go to small and medium enterprises and cooperatives, rather than spending it in our offices for staff and so forth. And the issue here, the second issue is with regard to the SMMEs, and a proposal that we must have, the performance must incorporate the 30-day payment or general payment. At national level, yes, we already have that. all the DGs in signing their performance, it includes that issue of 30-day payment. It also, and from a point of view of monitoring and evaluation, it is the department of Comrade Jeff Hadebe who is responsible for that monitoring and evaluation. He's actually even made presentations of the departments that have not been able to pay, including detailed report of how much was paid, where, and how. And I think this is becoming very helpful because already the DGs are conscious of the fact that if their performance, when their performance evaluation is being done, and they are found wanting in that area, they are going to face the music there because ultimately the paying of small and medium enterprises is very important. Where the weakness is now, it's about cascading that to almost all the levels of government, and that needs to happen because even a person who's sitting somewhere in a local municipality who is responsible for payment of whatever work was done, they've got to do it on time. My experience here is that really this is a painful process. This is very painful for SMMEs. And I think that it's more than just even the payment within the 30 days. We've just also agreed that for those who are not paying, they will be named and they will be shamed, but also that element of the performance is going to be taken very seriously. And I think that government needs to develop, we need to develop as government systems that can be able to catch this long before the SMMEs collapse. Part of what is also is a problem which I recently have had to deal with. For SMMEs, especially black SMMEs, here is a situation. Government procures vehicles from dealers. And this is what happens. As a Minister of Small Business Development, you encourage all your colleagues to buy from your black dealers, your small dealers, and guess what? You find the car, we are given a breakdown of what is this car, what's the amount of this car, and somewhere along the line you find that there is a 200 and something thousand rand discount. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is shocking, because I know that your SMMEs and black SMMEs in particular would never be able to give anybody that kind of discount because that's their profit in the first place. That's the money that they're supposed to use in building, in growing their businesses. So you've got that issue of a 30-day payment, but you've also got an issue of access to markets by these SMMEs. You've got big companies who locked that market a very, very long time ago. You've got these big companies coming and sitting down with government, the procurement officer and so forth, and saying, we can give you this discount. And for me is, I know government have to save the money, but I'm looking, on the one hand, we are saying that you must support your small and medium enterprises and your black and your women-owned and your youth-owned. At the same time, you have these systems that make it very difficult for them. So the issue for me is really much, much more than the 30-day payment. And then the other question is about the 54th Congress will carry on the policies. What is the ministry doing to assist farmers on the issue of land? I raised the issue of land because it's one of the most thorny issues in South Africa. And quite frankly, it shouldn't be a thorny issue. If you understand the plight of black people in particular, if you understand why our people were headed into townships and headed into rural areas, and they never had the opportunity which the farmers, I mean those farmers that are big farmers today, our people have to do a catch-up. They have to catch up with farmers who've been operating for the past 50, 100 years. They have to do catch up with generations of farming. It's important for us as South Africans collectively, both the farmers who own the land and government, to really begin to look at another way of doing this, because without land, what are we talking about? and without ensuring that when those who receive, who get the land, part of which has been now taken back or bought back by the government and given to our people, without assisting our people with the relevant implements, with the education for how to use that land, what are we talking about? This government is committed to ensuring that everything is done in an orderly fashion, but you know, orderly fashion also has to be a bit quick, you know. Orderly fashion must not take us too long because we keep on saying, no, we can't do it because the investors are telling us this. The investors, especially the international investors, they live there where they live. They've got their own people who own that land. They need to understand that in the South African context, we are trying to address the imbalances of the past. We do work with the Department of Agriculture. We also work together with the Department of Land Affairs. We have transversal agreements with these two departments so that whatever we do has to be in a coordinated fashion. Part of what we want to do, particularly as a Department of Small Business Development, working with the Department of Agriculture, is to say where we have cooperatives, which we are supporting as a department, there's got to be a connection with the Department of Agriculture, with the Department of Land Affairs, because they also sit with a lot of incentives for these small-scale farmers. But if we work together, in a coordinated manner, it means that we're not losing any resources along the line. So to that issue, really, I want to say to you, we're working with the Departments of Agriculture. We're also working with the provinces, because again, I keep on wanting to make the emphasis that this is one government, not three different governments. It's one government with three spheres of government, but the three spheres of government through the intergovernmental relations that we have, which is, by the way, legislated. We've got to make sure that happens. The issue of red tape, yes, we rolled out a plan for assisting at provincial and local level the issue of red tape, because this red tape is really a frustration to many of our SMMEs. And what happens is that government tries to put systems in place which are systems that are supposed to be assisting governments to make sure that there's accountability, to make sure that there's value for money, to make sure that whatever we do, we must make sure that we know what we're doing. But somewhere along the line, we end up also a little bit tangling ourselves up with that process and making it very difficult for your SMMEs to access the very same opportunities that we say they should. The reason why we have these workshops at a local level and spread them out throughout the country, it is because we want people at a local level who are behind the desk, even those that are passing regulations, that are passing legislation, they should be able to understand the real needs and the real challenges that are faced by SMMEs. We know that since 1994, there's a lot of legislation that has been passed. As a department, we think that it's important for us to look at that legislation vis-a-vis its impact on small and medium enterprises. Some of it is very good legislation. And by the way, at the moment, we are working on our Small Business Development Act. We've gone out to all the provinces to try and engage at provincial level so that we're engaging not just government. We've engaged different role players with different interests on small and medium enterprises. We're hoping that Small Business Development Act that will then be processed through Parliament, and hopefully next year we will finalize it, so that issues of definition of what SMMEs are, for instance, shouldn't be a quarrel with anybody. It should be very straightforward. The issue of the DTI requests SMMEs to come up with 3 million. Where should the SMMEs get this? Yes, we are very conscious of that. We are very aware of that. It is for that reason, for instance, that if you recall, the president announced that Minister Gigaba of Finance, Minister Naledi Pandor, and myself will have to work on a fund that is going to be focused on your startups and the kind of people you are talking about as SMMEs who are really at the beginning. This fund is supposed to have something like 1.5 billion for starters, but the fund really will be focusing on your startups, the ones that are at the lowest level, so that when we are being asked, when you have a bright idea, you've got a good experience already, and good experience for me, it's not about you having been there for the past 20 years or whatever. If you can prove in that space that here is something that I have and it has a potential for growth. That's why we have the gazelles here, because part of what has been happening with the gazelles, many of them started from zero with absolutely nothing. But our support, being almost like a startup, has made it happen. So in next year we will be announcing that fund as to when will the fund start? And I know that this is very painful because we're thinking of the fund only starting in 2019, 2020. That's probably going to be far for some. But remember that when we have a fund like that, we've got to be absolutely sure that the money is going to be going in the right place. The money will be accounted for. We will see that value for money. The other one is the one that was announced by the private sector of, again, 1.5 billion rand, which they also indicated that that money will focus more on your startups. And of course, it's taken very long. I don't know if there are any of the people who are part of that fund to finalize. It's taken very long. That fund was announced Mandisa last year or year before. It was announced last year, and now it's a whole year. I actually thought that the private sector would do things faster than us. So I'm surprised that till now, and your SMMEs are already knocking on our doors and saying, Minister, how do we access that fund? It will also then be an issue of communication. How do we make sure that once that fund has now been finalized and it's accessed, how do we make SMMEs to be aware of the fund and how to access this fund? I think that's all for now.
Thank you. We'll do a second round now on this side, but I know one of the Giselles here also indicated, so let's start this round also with the Giselle, and then I'm moving to that corner over there. So bring the mic to the front, please. We'll once again take we'll take 5 or 6, so that's what we'll be able to fit in.
Thanks. Good morning. My name is Nyiko Mabunda. I'm actually a policy analyst in government, but I'm here to support my sister who's a National Gazelle. She's the founder and CEO of Masana Dietetics, and she manufactures Eastern porridge. My issue, Minister, and all the colleagues that are here from government, is that we have a lot of policy documents and strategies around government to support SMMEs, but we do not have one depository system that an SMME can go and get assistance from. If you go to the IDC, for instance, and say you are a National Gazelle, they'll tell you that no, that's a Minister Zulu program, so we can't assist you there. So we need someone who can be a champion for a consolidated approach from government to support SMMEs. And for me, I really do not think that most people will say that we need more money on SMMEs, but it's about the coordination of the amount of monies that are around in government. You have a lot of funds that are in the provinces, municipalities, and national, but they are not accessible to anyone, and you cannot have, then you have some people double dipping on some of these things. So how do we create a one system for government, for SMMEs from government that deals with registration, deals with export support, deals with manufacturing, deals with getting capital goods support, and all of those things within one repository system that doesn't have to be all over the place.
Thank you very much. I think we got that point. So we're going to go to we'll do the lady in the front and then that table in the middle there.
Thank you. My name is Moretlo Molifi. I run a company called Telemedicine Africa, but I'd like to focus on innovation. And I'm going to wait for the minister to listen because she needs to listen to this one. Minister, I think for small businesses to grow, I think we really need to focus on innovation. I can tell you, I mean, I've been running a telemedicine company since 2008 and I haven't succeeded. I get more business outside South Africa than in South Africa because in South Africa I don't get support. But I would like to say we need to focus on innovative solutions that small businesses can come up with. We've got I think it's the only third license in the country for stem cells. So you can store your cells in case you get cancer later or anything. You can use your own cells to restore your own health. But we don't get assistance in the country because people don't understand the regulation, one. Secondly, no one understands that technology. So how do you even go to the IDC or the NEF for funding if they don't? We've invested almost 5 million in a lab in South Africa, in Sandton, to store stem cells. But we don't get support because people don't understand the technology. So I think what we need in the Ministry of Small Business is actually we need to capacitate it with people who can actually go out there, read up on what we can do as a country to actually grow the economy, because those are the things that can grow the economy, because there are new developments and they're not anywhere in other. We can be the only stem cell, we are the only stem cell lab on the continent at the moment, but we don't get support.
Thank you very much. To the table over there. No, it's going there.
Thank you very much,
Honorable Minister. My name is Leonard Sizani, mainly active in the health sector. My question basically is regarding small businesses. So far, listening to the debates in this room, there's been much said about the middle person in terms of the hierarchy. But my concern is mainly regarding the small businesses, mainly found in black townships. My question to you, Minister, is what programs is the department having to protect, to upskill, and to develop the small businesses? Protecting them against big business, protecting them against well-organized and generally business astute foreign nationals. We find our people, they don't have probably the opportunity to be in foreign like these ones. But they are from day to day being subjected to eradication, if I can put it that way. And I don't see any protection or programs coming from the department, which I had hoped it would be coming from them. And to round off what I'm trying to say here, in terms of protection and also in terms of finance, their capital demands to set up businesses are normally not that much, but there's nothing in space that I'm aware of that is helping them. And like I'm saying, the townships, as we speak now, big businesses, the small shops that we used to know belong to Mr. So-and-so are being eroded. We are creating very mega malls to the disadvantage of our people. The third and the last point is, I think, in a country like ours, there's got to be a certain level of protection from entry-level businesses. Your saloons, your caterings, your securities. And that's where our people are. And the very same people that we know have been subjected and are a product of Bantu education that never prepared them to play any role in business and in the economy. So what programs, what are we doing about those people? Because I think instead of empowering them, We're just letting them to die, and we're watching and we're marching on.
Thank you very much. And also thank you very much for going over your time, because that means we get the 10,000 Rand fine in. Thank you for that contribution. Mandisa, would you join us on stage, please? Can we take the mic over to the lady? Yes, that's one, and then we'll come to you, and then we'll finish this round. Please be mindful of the 10,000 Rand fine.
Morning, everyone. I'm Togo Mkwanes Kaluva from the Civil Rights Commission. I think for you, the Minister, the question for us will be, how do you harness the skills in the rural areas, especially around women? Because, you know, the skills they have are mainly traditional. For instance, in terms of beadwork, traditional clothes. And those women, they don't have anything, as you were saying, that opportunities in rural areas are very scarce. So I would like to know what your department intends to do about these highly skilled women who are in the middle of nowhere. You see their skills when there are events like the reed dance and other traditional festivals, highly skilled, and I'm glad that the other people like the EU and other ambassadors, how do you export the products that they produce? But before you export them, you need to build them first. So they're not the type of people who will come to these types of meetings or know where to go to. If I'm stuck in the middle of a village somewhere and this is the only skill I have, the assistants will have to come to me. And specifically for multi-choice, we would like to find out what is your response to your platform being used by religious leaders who exploit people using your platform, who sell products and promise people that these products will do all sorts of things that we all know won't happen. But you are the gateway to their so-called market. So what is it that you as MultiChoice are willing to do in order for you to help stop the exploitation of people who are destitute and desperate when your platform is being used to access those people?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The gentleman in front, John.
Thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Dr. George Tsibane from Black Business Council, as well as the Black Business Council in the built environment and chairing the subcommittee on water and sanitation. Very important to me is that I've attended, I very much appreciating the Honorable Minister, for a summit on water and sanitation very recently. What is very clear to me is that water and sanitation, energy, agriculture, land, and technology and health are mega nexus that we need to work on. But the critical question that we need to unblock is the issue of water licensing, which is affecting emerging farmers, particular black farmers. And very importantly, recently we were in the Western Cape. As we are saying that Western Cape is, some people think is an island in Africa. And this is a tip of Africa anyway. So basically we are working with emerging SMEs there as Black Business Council to deal with issues of SMEs and priorities around that. What we need from the ministry is the focus around water and sanitation, and secondly, licensing of water, because the ownership of the issue of land and ownership of licensing is still resting with the past. And that is a challenge that is affecting the whole developmental state objective, as the SG was saying yesterday. So we're pleading with you on that. And coming to MultiChoice, I was whispering to Her Excellency here, Cecil Julien, that MultiChoice SMEs, you find them in each corner, in each street, in every township in the country.
I think we need to give an applause to a South African company that has done that very well. However, the most important thing is that we are working to change because water constraint, climate change has arrived and is going to affect our business. We need water awareness in the country and knowledge. So we need to use your platform as Black Business Council in the built environment to deal with this. We have conceptualized a very detailed seminars around that. And we have launched them in the JSE. Most people said, why are you crazy looking at JSE? The 3% of multi-shares that are there have to be increased. That is what the outcome of the small business department is looking at. So basically, we want to use your platform. Can you take that challenge?
Good, thank you very much. The minister, we're going to have to excuse the minister very shortly. But the CEO of CEDA is here, which will continue with it. So, Minister, if you want to maybe just take 1 or 2 points and then hand over. And we'll come around for another round just now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Darrell. I'm just going to step out to do interviews. I'll be back. I'm not leaving. Yes, the issue of innovation, I can't agree with you more. Part of the reasons why we are working together with the Department of Science and Technology, very closely working with the Minister of Science and Technology, and part of the reason why also, as I was speaking, I said the ministers who've been given the responsibility to look at supporting SMMEs at that level through this fund that will have to be set up. It's myself, the Minister of Finance, as well as the Minister of Science and Technology. It is because of the experience that we're seeing on the ground and really responding to what you are saying. And I must really congratulate you, really, because I've known you for forever. And I know long before I became a Minister of Small Business Development, when I was still in the Department of Foreign Affairs in the early 200s, I used to see you in many of the African countries trying to knock on doors, and you kept on repeating to me, even at that time, that why is it that one would go and get the support and interest outside of South Africa? I think for me, it also was, to that large extent, if I can recall back to it, it wasn't also an issue of racism, because many a times I remember we had long discussions about how people didn't even think that you would be in that space. Worst of all, being a woman, that was even making it much more difficult. So I fully agree with you with the issue of ensuring that we support more and more people who are innovative, because what is entrepreneurship about? Entrepreneurship is about innovation. You've got to be able to produce something that people are going to appreciate and pop out of their pockets for, because you're not going to produce something that is meaningless to anybody else. And so I do believe that this coordinated approach by my department, the Department of Science and Technology, as well as the Department of Trade and Industry, really, I think the weakness here in the system has been our not being able to coordinate all these things and making people run from one place to the other, which also responds to your issue here. We do need this one-stop shop that we are trying to work on, and hopefully we've started a few. I think Mandisa will respond to the few that we already have, because we can see the progress on that already. And also this speaks to the consolidated approach by the different government departments, so that people don't do the running up and down. I think, Mandisa, you can respond to that because at 9:30 I have to run out to do an interview. As for what the program, what the department is doing in as far as protecting our small and medium enterprises, including the informal businesses, by the way, because they also are being really under stress and strain in the townships where, one, the infrastructure development is very poor. 2, even the regulatory environment there makes it very difficult for them. 3, there's not even proper registration of the businesses that are operating there. Hence, you find that there's a lot of foreign-owned businesses, which we are working on a program now of registration. Because unless you know who is where, then it becomes very difficult for you to think of the interventions. I must say to you, there is a interministerial there's an interministerial plan. We bring Minister of Home Affairs, Minister of Finance, Minister myself, DTI, and a number of us ministers. We have now come together to say this cannot be a one ministry approach in dealing with it. We need all the ministers in one, and this interministerial committee has really done a lot of work. In fact, just yesterday, I was told by the DG in the president, not in the presidency, in the monitoring and evaluation, that they want to move very fast with this whole issue of the registration of foreign nationals. I know that the issue of designating the businesses as salons and others only to South Africans, sometimes it creates a bit of controversy, and some people say, no, but then we are being discriminatory about it. But the bottom line is that as a department, we are also looking at the fact that none of our own people can go to neighboring country and begin to set that up. We need to be conscious of our own national interests, while at the same time respecting the human rights and all that. And we do need to have put plans in place which are not going to set people against excuse me, against each other. I do fully agree that we need to focus on that, because many of our people on the ground, I mean, my constituency is Welkom. The areas which I visit in the town, I'm telling you, all the salons have been taken over. And so our people don't have the opportunity. And this is a two-way process. One is about ensuring that we develop something that the world would not accuse us of being very discriminatory and causing conflict even amongst our communities, but we do need to respond to this. As a department, we've made it very clear we do need to respond to it, and I'm sure in the near future. And also we have a relationship already existing with specific organizations of those, we've got different organizations that we are working with, those that own salons, that own spaza shops, that we're trying to engage with them so that we can begin to focus, we can work together on this one so that it doesn't become just a government-owned, it's only a government program. I'm going to quickly really request that Mandisa deals with some of the programs that we have by the department in responding to upskilling our people. But before I do that, we do have a program that is called National Upliftment Strategy. That one is focusing on two folds. One is about empowering people who are in the informal sector by training them. So far, we've trained almost we're almost on 3,000, which is a drop in the ocean if we look at the 7,000, yeah. If we look at the entire country, we need to do a lot of training. And that program is one which we are trying to also ensure that it happens through the economic development offices. The ones that we have trained so far, we've trained them on the management of their business, identifying the relevant business in the area. We've trained them on the basics of doing business, but we've moved a step further. We've also given them implements of trade. So those who are in salons, we give them the hair dryers and other things. Those who are having the spaza shops, we try and assist them with the refrigerators. We try to assist them with the things that they need themselves. But this program is really, really very small, and it was stalled to a degree because we wanted to work with the retail sector and the retail sector, because again, on our own, we are not able to do that. If I can just be excused a bit to go do the interview and come back. Mandisa.